Weirdo gang. We got another mother banger. They built the cocaine empire, buried snitches, and made Atlanta bleed. Miami boys, Isaac and James. Let's go.
They came in with hustle and ambition. One, the brains with a sharp business vision. The other, the muscle who knew how to handle the streets. Isaac Hicks and James Sawyer didn't just make it through Miami's cocaine wars. They owned them. Discipline, strategy, and fear.
Bro, look at his chain, bro. This nigga got a 4-story chain. God damn, 1, 2, 3, 4, brother. I just know he hated putting that chain on.
Through Miami's cocaine wars, they owned them. Discipline, strategy, and fear fueled their rise. But when the Miami boys pushed north, whole cities flipped overnight. Orlando shook, Atlanta bled, and anyone who got in their way disappeared. So how did two guys out of Liberty City build one of the South's deadliest drug empires? Let's break it down. Isaac Hicks, better known as Turnpike Ike, didn't come into the world chasing crime. His first grind was legit, cutting grass as a landscaper. That's where he picked up his discipline.
Why every nigga that's gonna be successful started out cutting grass? I used to cut grass. Oh God, I used to get 20 for the back, 20 for the front. And me and my cousin split it down the middle. He get 20, I get 20. I started off with my neighbors, then I started doing the shit with my friend. Then I start, you feel me? Setting a little bit of that, yeah, I mean.
Eye for detail and that non-stop work ethic. From there, he leveled up into construction, putting up homes all across Dade County. But Miami in the 1980s wasn't like anywhere else. The drug trade was exploding and overnight fortunes were turning entire.
Niggas say niggas be charging 200 cut grass. Shit, I ain't gonna lie, nigga jacking the shit out you. Know what I'm saying? Cause I'm gonna be honest with you. Nigga, I cut your grass. I ain't weed eating or edging. I'm just fucking with you. I had a weed eater. But guess what'll happen? If I weed eat the back, my cousin gotta cut the front. Now if he weed eat the front, I gotta cut the back. So it'll just go back and forth like that.
Entire neighborhoods upside down. Ike spotted the opening and used the same sharp instincts that once made him money in construction to build something far bigger, a cocaine empire. Before long, he was raking in millions every month. He wasn't just running Miami, the whole...
Millions every month? How you make millions off a drug? How you make $1 million a month? I see why America just don't want these niggas on the streets. $1 million a month? At that point, you ain't got no choice but to get cocky.
State of Florida was moving to his beat. What made Ike stand out wasn't just the money, but how he carried himself. He stayed low-key, handled problems with diplomacy, and always looked out for people. That earned him respect everywhere his name was mentioned. And even when the drug money was flowing, he circled it back into his construction business, building up Dade County while stacking millions behind the scenes. Then there was James Sawyer. Most people knew him as Bossman. His story came straight out of Liberty City's struggle, where survival turned kids into soldiers. Big, fearless, and always ready for a fight, Sawyer became Ike's right-hand man, his bodyguard. At first, the job was simple. Protect the stash houses, keep the bullets and the snitches away. But Bossman wasn't just muscle. The way he ran things stood out. He treated lookouts like an army, barking orders and locking down corners like they were checkpoints. Before long, he wasn't just protecting Ike's spots, he had his own. One cracked spot inside one of Ike's buildings, backed by the Colombian pipeline, and the money was insane. Bossman was pulling in as much as $100,000 a day. Ike was the...
Ooh, 100 a day? God damn, boy. What the hell is going on here?
quiet strategist, the chess player. Bossman was the muscle, tall with heavy hands and a temper that could flip a block upside down. If Ike was the CEO, Bossman was the enforcer. Word on the street was simple.
You back,
Nobody
gang?
crossed Boss twice. When they looked around, they saw the local crews hustling sloppy, blowing profits on cars and jewelry with no rules, no structure, no order. Ike hated that chaos. "These boys are wild out here," he told Bossman back. "We're going to give them something to stand behind." That vision became reality.
You know, you wanna know something crazy? Why back in the Gap, all the drug lords who was really making money that was black, they all look like pimps.
And just like that, the Miami Boys were born, a crew of young black dealers.
They don't look like back in no Gap. Hold on. They don't look like no back in no Gap. They look like today.
Out of Liberty City and Overtown, two of Miami's toughest drug zones, started making noise in the streets. They called themselves the Miami Boys, but holding down their blocks in Miami wasn't enough. By late 1984, they took that hustle on the road, rolling into Orlando with plans to stake out new turf. At first, it was quiet moves. A few rented houses, a couple of apartments on South Paramore Avenue and West South Street. But soon enough, everybody in Orlando knew who they were. Police estimated that at least 125 of them were in the city, posted up across different spots. They didn't blend in either. The Miami Boys had a signature look: shaved heads, flashy gold chains, rings, gold caps on their teeth, everything loud, everything meant to turn heads. Local teens couldn't resist it. These kids started running errands for them, moving drugs between houses.
You know one thing I noticed about this? There's no way to be quiet with getting money. There's no way to hide getting money. When you getting money, it's gonna be out there and people gonna know. There's no way to be quiet to get money.
Standing watch on corners and whistling when police cars rolled by. The cops quickly realized these weren't just random hustlers. Someone back in Miami was calling shots, sending orders down. Still, the group didn't move like a traditional gang. It was loose, more like a network that worked together when it made sense. They kept it polished, too. Officers said whenever they approached them, the Miami Boys were polite, well-mannered even, but behind that smooth exterior was a cold operation built on cocaine sales and intimidation. By 1985, their presence was undeniable. Day or night, if you drove past their spots, it was parties, cars out front, jewelry flashing. Locals told stories about rival dealers getting shot, not killed, but shot in the shoulder or the backside. It was their way of sending a message. We're here, and this block is ours. And the message worked. Dealers who once dominated South
That's AI for sure.
Paramore fell back, sliding a few blocks north to avoid problems. Orlando's local hustlers just didn't have the stomach for the kind of violence the Miami Boys brought with them. Police tried hitting back. Early that year, after a 3-month undercover investigation, they locked up 22 people, 14 of them straight from Miami. For a moment, it looked like the heat slowed things down, but by summer, the Miami Boys were back, stronger than ever. Merchants in the area said the cops were trying, but they weren't convinced the arrest made much of a dent. The crew was too organized, too deep, and the fear was real. Victims of shootings refused to press charges, terrified of retaliation. One man who called the police ended up with a bullet through his window. Then came a murder in June. Curtis Johnson, one of their own, gunned down outside an apartment building. Detectives believed it was an inside dispute, proof that even within the Miami Boys, loyalty came second to power. Police Chief Henson wasn't about to let them take over. He made it clear the only way to push them out was to apply constant pressure day after day, never letting up. But the dealers weren't exactly laying low. In one raid, officers even found a sign brazenly declaring, "The Miami Boys are here to stay." For veteran cops who'd worked in big cities like Philly or New York, this wasn't new. It was just Orlando catching up. Street crews hustling for territory, flashing cash, and pulling kids into the game. That was the playbook. To the Miami Boys, Orlando was just another block. But for the people living there, it was a storm they couldn't escape. By 1986, the Miami Boys had already set up shop in Atlanta, spreading their reach across cities in the Southeast. The money was different up there. What went for $500 an ounce in Miami could easily sell for 3 times that in Atlanta. That profit margin alone made the move a no-brainer. When they slid into Jacksonville that same year, they quickly got their hands deep into the city's crack and heroin trade. In Atlanta's housing projects, it didn't take long for them to stand out. Among the poorest residents, the flashy chains.
You wanna know something? Man, look at them goddamn chains. Niggas look like Africans. Man, one thing you gotta know back in the Gap, they didn't have cameras and shit like that. So you know how much shit probably went on that niggas just don't know about? Boy.
Diamond pieces and Dolphins and Hurricanes gear made it clear who they were. Everybody else repped Falcons, Hawks, or Yellow Jackets, but these boys, they let you know straight up, they were from Miami. And what they brought with them wasn't just drugs. It was violence, intimidation, and death. Police officers and housing managers quickly noticed how different this crew was from the local dealers. The crack was stronger, the guns were louder, and the intimidation was on another level. Residents talked about how bold the Miami boys were, standing out on corners, waving guns, talking through walkie-talkies, and pushing drugs like it was nothing. You couldn't even walk through some blocks without somebody trying to sell you a rock. Elders in the community felt the shift the hardest. Activists like Susie Laborde spoke on how older residents were too scared to even leave their apartments. Robberies, break-ins, and purse snatchings became part of everyday life, and people felt trapped.
See, that's what niggas fuck up at. If niggas just sell their little drugs, get their money, and get the fuck on, nobody wouldn't give a fuck that you selling these drugs right here. But niggas gotta always just be too tough. I want every black man that's gonna watch this video. Being tough is what fuck all y'all shit up. Point blank period. Really being emotional and sensitive what fucks everybody's shit up. Niggas just can't take that. They can't handle this and they get the fuck on. If you can handle this, this is your walk of life. Niggas gotta, oh, I'm gonna try it out, I'm gonna see it. Then when they find out they not with it, too late, you done read it. Or you done got bitched or, punked or some shit. It's too late.
Police started to realize they weren't dealing with a loose crew of dealers, but something closer to an organized crime family. The Miami boys came into Atlanta's low-income neighborhoods.
Nigga look like Deion Sanders. Deion, that's you? Hold on, Brian. That might be Brian.
Knowing they were on untouched
Look like Kanye West, too.
ground. The city's housing projects gave them perfect cover. Crowded hallways, over 1,000 vacant units to stash product, and a built-in customer base willing to pay top dollar for high-grade coke. For them, Atlanta was wide open. In Miami, the pressure from federal task forces had made it harder to operate, so many of them headed north where the laws weren't as tight. That's how the untouchables, as they were called back home, spread across the Southeast, popping up in Orlando, Tampa, Pensacola, Jacksonville, Montgomery, and Savannah. But nowhere did they hit harder than Atlanta. To send a message, they made examples. A 22-year-old local dealer was kidnapped, shot in the head, and dumped on a county road.
Damn.
Another hustler caught 12 bullets in broad daylight. Even innocent people got caught up. A 60-year-old woman was killed in the crossfire of a drug war.
See, that's where it go wrong at. That's where it go wrong at.
Cases like that showed just how reckless and violent things had become. By the spring of 1986, the Miami boys were locked in a war with the locals. Arrests came, but it didn't slow them down. They had already planted their flag in places like Techwood Homes, John Hope Homes, and Egan Homes. And with their South Florida connections, they could undercut everyone else, offering better product at lower prices. If price cuts didn't work, they fell back on force. Police said new recruits were flown or bussed in straight from Florida, handed cash, guns, and drugs, and even had their housing covered. Some were barely 17, still carrying airline tickets when they got picked up. In just 2 years, the crew grew from fewer than 10 members to around 30, running shifts like a full-on business and setting up drive-through style stop-and-cop spots in project parking lots. Cops openly admitted they were outgunned. While officers carried basic sidearms, the Miami boys had Uzis, MAC-10s, and 9mm pistols as standard issue. By 1987, 13 murders were officially linked to the gang, and investigators flat out called them Atlanta's biggest problem. But while the Miami boys were spreading through Atlanta and beyond, starting in October 1985, the feds and local investigators launched an 18-month mission. They weren't chasing small-time dealers, they were aiming for the entire operation. Over that period, they executed nearly 20 search warrants at different Miami-linked spots, and every raid turned up more than just the usual coke, guns, cash, and jewelry. What they kept finding was far more valuable: ledgers, paper trails that revealed the real story. In the first 3 months, they zeroed in on 3 main houses. One was on NW 90.
The fuck, they blow a hole in the motherfucker? God damn.
In the first 3 months, they zeroed in on 3 main houses. One was on NW 95th Terrace, where Sawyer lived, right near a high school. Another was on NW 91st Street, home to AJ Smith. The third was over on NW 105th Street, where Isaac and Janet Hicks stayed. To tighten the case, agents leaned on informants to make a few controlled buys, 3 or 4 in total, straight from Sawyer at his spot and at Smith's house. Undercover eyes were also on the streets, watching traffic fly in and out. One night, they counted close to 300 different cars and trucks in just 3 hours. And it wasn't just random movement.
Them niggas was getting money.
Sawyer and Smith were regularly linking up with the Hickses, keeping that pipeline active. Then came January 7th, 1986. Law enforcement pulled up with warrants for Sawyer's place on 95th Terrace and Smith's spot on 91st Street. Smith just happened to be outside when they started raiding. Inside, they hit on white powder, packaging supplies like manila envelopes with red labels, and cash tied to both Smith and Isaac Hicks. The firepower inside was wild too. A rifle, a crossbow, a hand grenade, plus several handguns sitting in Smith's car. At Sawyer's crib, agents found 2 handguns and a fat stash of cash. Sawyer himself had $2 grand sitting in his pockets. But the biggest catch was the ledgers. They were packed with coded notes and color systems marking narcotics, cash, and names, including Sawyer, Smith, Hicks, and others moving with them. Later that same month, after another undercover buy at Smith's spot, the feds doubled back with fresh warrants. This time, Sawyer and Smith were together when they got caught slipping. Inside, more white powder turned up, along with photos of Smith posing with cash and guns. Both houses also held more loose papers, entries matching the ledger system the investigators had already uncovered at Sawyer's place. After all those raids, things went quiet around those houses, but the feds weren't done yet. With a secret informant feeding them tips, they started making buys at new spots Sawyer pointed out. Then in late June, they circled back to Sawyer's place and hit it again. This time, they struck gold, white powder, bagging materials, cash, ledgers, even a handgun. A month later, on July 25th, an undercover agent scored a half ounce at Hicks's house, and that buy was all the police needed to move in with a warrant. When they raided Hicks's spot at 2000 NW 105th Street, he was there with Sawyer and a few others. Inside, agents uncovered automatic weapons and stacks of money. Out in the carport, they popped the hood on Hicks's car and found white powder tucked away. They even grabbed a business card from Hicks that had the same color codes and numbers written on it as the ledgers from Sawyer and A.J. Smith's homes. The investigation didn't slow down after that. It only stretched wider. Month after month, agents kept running the same play. Get a warrant, hit the house, seize whatever drugs, money, or guns they could find. By October of '86, Sawyer had moved from his old spot on 95th Terrace to a new crib at 2137 NW 92nd Street. But the fresh address didn't stop the heat. When investigators raided the new place, they came up on marijuana, packaging gear, an adding machine, more ledgers, photos tying Sawyer.
I ain't gonna lie. These niggas was getting them pounds in.
Hicks and A.J. Smith together, piles of cash, and more firearms. In late 1986, the street started talking, and investigators finally got a break on Samuel Smith's role in the game. The lead came from his own cousin, Alice Roll, who was quietly working as an informant. Samuel had bragged to her that he was moving work for a man named Hicks. Sometimes Alice even copped drugs straight from Samuel, who always made sure to get his supply from Hicks. She also witnessed how Hicks handled business, paying his crew in white powder right out of his own house. By February 1987, Alice pushed her luck and tried to skip the middleman, going straight to Hicks's house to buy some white powder. Hicks wasn't having it though. He told her that if she wanted anything, she had to deal with Samuel. Not long after, Samuel pulled up angry, scolding her for trying to go around him. He told her if he bought something from Hicks and it led to him getting caught, he'd be as good as dead. A few mornings later, he showed up at her spot again, letting her know he'd heard whispers that she was an informant, and that the only reason she was still breathing was because of his pull. Around that same time, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. A woman named Deborah Plez started working with law enforcement in February 1987. Unlike Alice, Deborah already had ties to Hicks. She knew him socially and had even bought white powder from him before. Now she was playing.
Damn, so all started with the females raiding.
The double role. In March and April, she made controlled buys directly from Hicks, each one recorded and watched by investigators. At one point, Deborah even tried to up the stakes, asking Hicks if she could grab a kilo or a half. Hicks didn't blink. He told her to just hit him when she was ready. By late April, everything was boiling over. On April 14th and again on the 23rd, A.J. Smith, one of Hicks' right-hand men, told Deborah they were expecting a huge shipment, 40 kilos, set to land at Dodge Island on April 24th. That night, Deborah was sitting inside Hicks's spot on 105th Street with Hicks, Sawyer, and A.J. Smith. While there, she spotted a briefcase in the open trunk of Hicks's car. Inside was a stack of money, $250,000, according to A.J. That was her signal. She slipped out, walked over to a nearby gas station, and made the call to Detective Dennis Reddington. Hours later, the move went down. Hicks, Sawyer, and another associate pulled up in a van. Hicks stepped out holding a package that looked like pure product. Deborah overheard him tell A.J., "This stuff here better be like the other because this is righteous." Those words sealed it. A.J. then asked Deborah to ride along with him and another person as they drove the van to another of Hicks's houses on 25th Avenue. Once there, A.J. and the other man started unloading boxes into the garage. Two of the boxes were cracked open, showing smaller packages of white powder stuffed inside. After the job was done, they rolled right back to Hicks's spot on 105th Street, not knowing law enforcement was already closing in. 3 days later, on April 27th, Ples linked up with Detective Reddington and dropped some key information. That was all Reddington needed to secure a warrant for a house sitting at 9800 NW 25th Avenue. While the paperwork was being handled, agents already on surveillance spotted Hicks pulling up to the spot. He didn't stay long, about 30 minutes, before taking off with Sawyer riding shotgun. That's when things got hectic. Agents tailed them, and it turned into a high-speed chase through the streets. Eventually, they boxed the car in and brought it to a stop. Reddington pulled up not long after, and when they searched Hicks's ride, they found a garage door opener. Instead of wasting time, they loaded Hicks and Sawyer into a squad car and rolled straight back to the house. Using that opener, agents cracked into the garage, knocked, announced themselves, and then stormed in with the warrant. What they found inside was the mother lode. Over 11 kilos of white powder sat in different stages, some raw, some already bagged up and ready to hit the streets. They came across processing equipment, packaging supplies marked with color-coded labels, and even ledgers scribbled with the same codes investigators had seen in earlier busts. But that wasn't all. Hidden around the place was over 30.
If you could just give me this little side right here. Right here. I'm good.
$3,000 in cash, jewelry worth more than $400,000.
Let's say $150K. Just give me one of these bags.
3 handguns, and even a sawed-off rifle. To top it off, mail addressed to a Samuel Smith tied the spot back to another address, 2000 NW 105th Street. It was from this house that Hicks, Sawyer, and several others ended up in handcuffs. Hicks found himself staring down the kind of charges that could bury a man for life. Prosecutors hit him with operating a continuing criminal enterprise, a charge that alone carried a life sentence. On top of that, he was accused of running a drug house less than 1,000 feet from.
Bruh, they be, man, that nigga look like a bulldog. They be talking about us, talking about some, we, wear our clothes tight and all this shit, yeah. Man, they wear they shit tight too.
From a school, a move that doubled the punishment. 30 years just for that one count. His wife Janet wasn't spared either. She was arrested and charged with conspiracy to distribute white powder and possession of white powder. When the police moved in, they stripped Hicks of everything flashy that represented his lifestyle. 3 Cadillacs, a Mercedes, a Bronco, a Jaguar, a stretch limousine, and 2 vans, all seized. By sunrise, most of the crew was locked up, but 4 suspects were still out there, including Joel Scott, a former Miami cop. The streets already knew what time it was. Hicks's empire was falling apart. Cops raided 18 drug houses and 14 more properties linked to him, worth around $2.6 million. Just 6 of those houses had reportedly pulled in over $2 million in 9 months, making them what police called drug supermarkets. Hicks, though, painted a different picture. He swore his fortune came from landscaping and construction. Speaking from the Dade County Jail, he claimed the government had been after him for years simply because he was a black man with success. He pointed out that he had once tried to join a minority building program, bragging in his 1985 application that his company employed more than 40 workers and aimed to give back to the community. But the feds weren't buying it. They built their case piece by piece.
Nigga got popped. Y'all see that shit? Like blood.
Until a grand jury was ready to move. Hicks and his right-hand man Sawyer were both indicted. Hicks faced a mountain of charges: running a criminal enterprise, conspiracy to traffic more than 5 kilos of white powder, 2 counts of dealing drugs near a high school, 5 counts of possession with intent to distribute, and 5 counts of being a convicted felon caught with guns. Sawyer wasn't far behind, hit with nearly identical charges, including running a criminal enterprise, drug conspiracy, 2 counts of selling near a school, 3 weapons charges, plus additional drug counts. By December 21st, the hammer finally dropped. Bossman got 56 years plus 6 years of special parole and another 5 on supervised release. But Hicks, he got hit the hardest. The judge slammed him with 137 years, along with the same parole and supervision terms. On paper, that was the end of Money Hicks, or at least that's what everyone believed. When those heavy federal prison doors slammed shut, the government figured the Miami Boys empire would collapse. But it didn't. Being locked up didn't mean shutting down. From behind bars, the 2 men turned their cells into command centers, running things with coded letters, timed phone calls, and even lawyer visits that doubled as strategy meetings. Orders kept moving to their lieutenants in Atlanta like nothing had changed. Hicks had a rotation of phone numbers approved, everything from girlfriends to a travel agency down in Florida. He'd hang up mid-sentence to trick the government scanners, then call right back and pick up where he left off. Meanwhile, Sawyer, who was studying paralegal work, figured out a slicker move. He marked envelopes privileged so they couldn't be opened, then slipped detailed instructions inside to his right-hand men like Big Will Roker. Later, in his prison memoir, Sawyer summed it up perfectly. A stamp and a chair could move more dope than a car full of hitters. By April 1988, Atlanta officials tried to fight back. Police Chief Morris Redding and Housing Authority Director San Hyder stepped up with a plan. They
Somebody read it. Somebody had to read it. There's no way you found out shit like that without somebody read it.
Promised more surveillance on crack houses, stricter truancy enforcement to get kids off the corner, and tenant meetings to pull the community in. Vacant apartments would be filled so dealers couldn't use them as stash spots, and even sidewalk vendors were targeted since some were doubling as street-level drug pushers. The police thought they finally had momentum. Winston Theodore Brown, one of the Miami Boys' top guys, had just been convicted for killing another member inside Techwood Homes. Their leader, Anthony Johnson, out of Hollywood, Florida, was gone too, sprayed with 8 bullets in a hit that also left an innocent bystander, Vincent Rainwater, paralyzed after catching one in the back. But even with those wins, the same problem kept coming back around. Lock up one crew, and another squad flew in from Florida to take their place. Bond someone out, and the next plane ticket south already had their name on it. The cycle never seemed to end. Meanwhile, the city tried another approach, giving kids in the project something to hold on to besides the streets. For the first time, Techwood Homes had its own Little League team, a community football squad, and team programs to keep the youth busy. On the surface, the projects looked calm. Neat rows of apartments, trimmed lawns, kids playing in patches of dirt. But beneath it all, the Miami Boys had brought attention that never really left. By 1990, once the sun dropped, the porches emptied and doors stayed locked. The problem soon outgrew the Miami Boys. Copycats started popping up everywhere. Police had pegged the original group at around 30 or 40, but before long, anyone with ambition and a gun was claiming the name. Being a Miami boy instantly made you look tough. A police bulletin revealed drug gangs spreading through a dozen Atlanta
I wonder if the
neighborhoods.
Miami Boys still
Some
going
were
on
small
today.
cliques, others were full-blown operations. Crews like Down by Law Jr., Ladies Down by Law, and the Herndon Homeboys were moving heroin and white powder, and sometimes even robbing rival dealers. The Miami Boys themselves had fractured into factions. The Egan Homes set controlled Lindsay Street and Palmetto Avenue. The University John Hope Homes crew worked out of Greens Ferry Avenue and Delmar Lane. Other corners like Allison Court, Beckwith Street, and Campbellton Road were tied to them too. On Cascade Place, a whole other gang was setting up shop, while a group calling themselves the No Shirts gained a little notoriety on Campbellton Road. With all these cliques, violence became the language. Homicide Captain Calvin Wardlaw believed several murders were tied to feuds between the Miami Boys and rivals like the John Hope robbing crew and the Herndon Homeboys. Killings stretched from basketball courts to drive-bys in the projects, with bodies dropping all over Northwest and South Atlanta. But even the police admitted it was hard to tell who was who. Some kids were really plugged in, while others just threw the name around for respect. As Wardlaw put it, what even is a Miami boy? Yes, some were actually from Florida, but plenty weren't. They just wore the title because it carried weight. For people who'd lived there a long time, this wasn't anything new. Violence had been bubbling up for years. Only now it was sharper, louder, and deadlier. Then in November 1991, the Miami Boys took their operation up to Washington, D.C. Leading the charge was Cornell Augustus McKenzie, known on the streets as the Click, along with 13 others. McKenzie was running things heavy, even operating a crack house on 14th Place SE, just steps away from Malcolm X Elementary School. Prosecutors painted a grim picture. Kids walking home every day had to pass dealers, guns moving in and out, and dope being sold right outside. U.S. Attorney Richard Cullen said that even if the kids weren't buying, they were still victims just for having to grow up around that chaos. The indictment spelled it out: conspiracy, guns, and a massive crack empire with roots in Miami. All 13 co-defendants were caught up in it, but only one, 24-year-old Paul Brooks, was from D.C. The rest, straight out of Miami, where investigators say it all kicked off back in 1986. According to prosecutors, McKenzie first tested the waters in Tampa, then spread to Panama City. By 1987, business was booming, and word on the street was D.C. couldn't get enough crack. That's when McKenzie brought his boys north. To move the product, women would hide white powder in their underwear and fly it into National Airport, while suitcases full of guns rolled into the city on buses. McKenzie even tried to spark a gang war in Old Town Alexandria to lock down his territory. Shots rang out more than once, but somehow
Shots rang out. Everybody scattered.
nobody got killed. Still, the heat was on. Eventually, McKenzie got hit with a 20-year sentence, marking the start of the end for his crew. The final blow didn't come in D.C., though. It came years later in Atlanta. As the city prepared for the 1996 Summer Olympics, officials started tearing down public housing projects that had long been hotbeds for street gangs. By the late 90s, with their neighborhoods gone and police closing in, the Miami Boys were running out of options. In 1999, the last dealer connected to the crew, Michael Delancey, was finally caught. What started as a bold move from Miami to the nation's capital ended in scatter and collapse. The Miami Boys once had a grip on the streets, but when the walls closed in, their empire crumbled just like the projects they used to run.
All empires crumble when there's so much fucking wrong in it. I think if niggas were in like good drug dealer, because I know they got some drug dealing systems out here that's not getting caught. When you run a good one, I don't think they'll fuck with you.
What are your thoughts on this story? Appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.
Yeah, moral of the story, bro. Just do the shit the right way and do it right for the first time. It's hard, but it's possible. Appreciate y'all for watching. Catch me in the next one.